There was a study released back in September of last year that you may have missed. A lot of people missed it. It tried to tally up the damage that was done across from all of the riots that took place after the George Floyd shooting. That estimate came in at somewhere between $1 and $2 billion. $1 and $2 billion, billion with a B. Yesterday, there was a shooting in Minneapolis, in the Minneapolis area. U.S. Marshals were trying to bring in a suspect. The suspect reportedly had a gun, reportedly wouldn't respond to commands from the officers, and reportedly would not drop his weapon. And officers ended up shooting him. That sparked riots overnight in Minneapolis, believe it or not, the place where so many of these riots have centered in the past. That got us thinking about costs of the riots. Another thing that happened yesterday was released the estimate of how much it cost, how much the Capitol incursion cost, how much damage was done there as measured in dollars. And it looks like that came in at about $1.5 million. The incursion, some called them protests, some called it a riot, some called it an insurrection. It's unclear to me how it could be an insurrection. I don't think anyone has been charged with or convicted of insurrection yet. But anyway, that was the talking points from the left. The total cost for it ended up being about $1.5 million. Well, there was a study released back in September of last year that you may have missed. A lot of people missed it. It tried to tally up the damage that was done across from all of the riots that took place after the George Floyd shooting. That estimate came in at somewhere between $1 and $2 billion. $1 and $2 billion, billion with a B. That is, depending on how you slice it, somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 times as expensive as the Capitol incursion on January 6th.
That's wild.
That's wild. Now, remember, the media painted the riots as mostly peaceful. That's still one of my favorite moments from the news last year. I think it was either CNN or MSNBC, I think, who had a reporter standing in front of a vista of burning buildings and cars, fires in the background. And I don't know if he wasn't aware of it. He should have been aware of it because they picked their live shots pretty carefully. But while on air, he talked about how the protests, remember, the protests are mostly peaceful. You could also say the riots were mostly peaceful, because it turns out a lot of them were riots, and turns out they were not peaceful. So contrast that against the stories of insurrection that came out of January 6th, where, as far as I can tell, no one tried to set up another government. No one tried to take control of the government. There were a whole lot of people taking selfies. Someone sat in Nancy Pelosi's chair and took her mail, which I think is a federal offense. But the media made that look like an unbelievably imminent threat to democracy itself. And they continually tried to play down the George Floyd riots. And again, we're going to say $1.5 billion in damage there versus $1.5 million in damage as far as the Capitol incursion goes.